Cohen, and this is from Summit School of Chess. I just wanted to show you this really neat position today and talk about a very important topic, and that is how to defend against losing positions. And this comes directly from one of my own students' games, who has given me permission to use this as an example in my videos. And in this position, you'll see that black is up 3 points. To be more specific, black is up a rook in exchange for a knight and has an additional pawn. Okay? And yet, despite this, and despite the fact that black probably should be winning here, white goes on to make a draw, and I want to show you how. So, one of the biggest things that I teach, and I'm not going to cover in this lesson, is that I'm a big Jeremy Silman fan, and I'm a big believer that the true purpose of chess is to get good things for ourselves that are different than the opponent, but then also to remember that something is only as good as it can be used. Likewise, something is only as bad as it can be exploited. And we'll talk more about this in other lessons. This is one of the biggest concepts that I teach, and I'm saving it for a secret future lesson when I hit a certain number of subscribers. Anyways, here's the long story short of all this, okay? Let's take a look at this. What does black have that we don't? Black has an extra rook. Black has an extra pawn. Let's take a look at them. Well, these pawns are all equaled out. These are all equaled out. This is not equal, but we do have two of these to kind of combat that one. So black's extra pawn is right here. And actually, just a few moments ago, black was trying to maybe utilize that when white correctly decided to shut it down and make it impossible. So basically, black does have an extra pawn, but it's right there, and there's no way it can safely advance ever because white has way too much control over it. So he already succeeded in shutting that down. What else does black have that we don't have? Black has the extra rook. Now we need to think to ourselves, what does black need to achieve with those rooks in order to beat us? Well, what do rooks need in general? Rooks need two things. First, they need an open file. They need a file that has no pawns on it. But what's the purpose of having an open file? Just to sit on it? No. The true purpose of an open file in most cases is to penetrate. It's like basically an open file is a bridge that connects white's position and black's position, and the side that controls it basically gets to decide who comes in and who goes out. So here's kind of the deal. After thinking for a while, white discovered a couple things. Number one, that if black's going to win, black has to use this pawn, which is extra, which they really can't, or has to activate these rooks. The only way to activate these rooks is one of two ways. Either double on the F file, which we're going to see happen in the game, or to try and play for A4 and exchange off pawns with us so that that can be opened up. For example, if we do nothing here productive, and black gets to play A4, and we take and they take, and then, either we take and they take, and now suddenly this rook does have penetration squares in our camp where they can start coming after our weak units, like our base pawns on, B and E perhaps. Or we could avoid the trade altogether, but still, with the rook coming into A2 and getting to penetrate, we're going to start seeing some immediate consequences and damage. And then, like I said, the other way is on the F file. But remember this, everybody. How do you beat rooks? How do you play against rooks? The answer is take away their penetration squares. I know this is kind of a roundabout thing, but here's what we're going to see in this game, and this is how white is able to hold this, okay? Number one, because of the extra pawn, white keeps that at bay. Because of the extra rook, white consistently makes sure that black is never safely able to break with A4 and is never safely able to gain access to any of these 4 penetration points on the F file. In addition, we also make great effort to not let black trade off this horrendously bad bishop And because we have a knight and they don't, even though it's worse, it is still different. It's something that we have that they don't, and we should strive to make this knight as good as possible. Take a look at what happens now. Here's what actually happened in the game. Knight f1. What's the purpose of this? This knight might reach around to g3 and f5, where it can actually get to somewhere that has a good target. I know a lot of people here might want to play something like bishop f2 and knight e3 to d5 and say, wow, that is an amazing outpost on d5. But remember, if we want to get to be stronger chess players, we have to differentiate between forward squares and active squares. Sure, if we could imagine a knight on d5 right now, that would be phenomenal looking. Phenomenal looking. But after the bishop moves or whatever, what is this knight actually doing to cause black harm? It's not pressuring anything. It's not attacking anything. So it just kind of looks good and does nothing. In fact, if anything, this pawn being a backward pawn on an open file could easily be a target for us. And so by putting the knight on d5, we actually block it. Therefore, it's actually a better idea to come in this way. And sure, white can stop it, but then maybe there's new weaknesses to work with. Rook a7. What's up? They want to play a4. We are shutting that down, right? h6. They want to play bishop g5 and try to trade off that bishop. It's actually a really good idea for black. Knight g3, king h7. I don't know why black did not go through with this idea. Maybe they were afraid of after trade and trade of this, and now d6 having to be a bit more sensitive with the rooks having to defend it now that the bishop is gone. So instead, king h7, knight f5, rook here, rook back. Now that the a4 is no longer threatened, maybe this rook can slide over to some other places. King here, h4. If black is taking so long to play the move bishop to g5 and force an exchange of that horrible bishop, we're not going to let them do that at all. They shuffle around a little bit, but I want you to keep something in mind. Again, black has two goals here. One, basically, actually, okay, black has a few goals. One is to play a4. Get that penetration going for that rook, get that traded off. Number two would be to actually find a penetration point on the f-file. I want you to watch how white just calmly kind of keeps the structure of this position locked and just prevents black from ever getting these things. Look, they're trying to play a4. We shut it down. Look, we made a waiting move. They were trying to get into f2 and penetrate. We shut that down. We are constantly aware of black's ability and desire to try and get their rook into our territory, and we just consistently shut it down. And eventually, actually, black goes on to blunder in this game with this skewer, boom, boom, and then it was simply a new game of knight versus bishop. We traded this off, and then this knight did into a good square, and then actually there was a tactic, and then unfortunately my student in time pressure ended up taking a draw on this position, as this knight actually ended up kind of getting trapped over here on the queen side, unable to kind of fix itself. That's a different topic. That's a totally different topic of how to drive home a victory. But okay, again, sorry, I know this has been a little scatterbrained, but here's the main concept, okay? Do you want to be better at defending positions that are bad, okay? Just like any other position, you need to realize a couple things. One, what is it that your opponent has that is so good? If in this case it's an extra pawn and an extra rook, you need to do everything you can to make sure that those rooks don't get open files, they don't get penetration points, that that extra pawn doesn't get a chance to play in the game, if you ever have the opportunity to. If you can shut down your opponent's ability to use their strength, then they can't get you. See? And that's how you defend. I'm going to issue one last caution warning before I wrap up this quick video, and this is going to be for an entirely other lesson called The Principle of Defense, Emanuel Lasker's Principle of Defense, but I will say this. Please keep in mind that as a chess player trying to become a master, we don't like defending. We don't like it. I don't win chess games by defending. I win by being aggressive and using tactics and pursuing my ideas and aggressive thoughts, not by going backwards and defending, okay? And so we should try to remember, don't defend unless you have to. And if you have to, don't use any more effort than is necessary. But in a position like this, it's a bit different because we're losing. We're not just like, do I need to defend here? We are losing. And so we have to come up with a strategy to shut these things down, or else they will take us over because we are losing. So it's a bit of a different scenario between defending a borderline position and flat out being losing, okay? Please see that difference. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. I hope that you took something away from this lesson, and I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, goodbye